Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Crew First Culture podcast. My name is Jeremy. And as always, thank you very much for spending some time with us today. So, today, again, I say it all the time, but I'm very excited to have today's guest on. Looking forward to the conversation that we'll be having. But today, I have Justin Lorenzen with me. How are you doing, Justin?
Doing good, man. How are you?
Doing good. So, Justin is a training officer with the Oklahoma City Fire Department. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, let me give you a little chance to give us a bio. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll get started.
All righty. So, again, thanks for having me on. Honored to be here. I've got about 15 years in the fire service. Started at small department, combination career and volunteer down in Noble for about 3 years. Good guys, good department. Decided I wanted to try to expand, get a little bigger department, a little more opportunity. Got lucky, got hired on at Oklahoma City Fire on my first try, which is not real common. So I was pretty humbled to have that opportunity. And I've been with Oklahoma City now probably going on about 13 years. And then I've been down training division here for a little over 2 years now.
All right. So I'll say this. You were on as a guest on Chief Moore's show, The Weekly Scrap. It's got some great episodes. I actually listened to yours this morning just to kind of get some more ideas of some things that I'd like to bring up and talk with you about. So there are a few times I will kind of refer to that because I think there are some good topics that you guys discuss, but there are several that I would like to kind of dig a little bit deeper on. So I would like to also steer everybody to that. The Weekly Scrap episode with Justin is a good one. And definitely don't want to double up any of the things that you guys talked about, but like I said, I really want to dig into a few more of those. But kind of before we get started, you run a really cool Facebook page. Is it a page or a group? I always get confused with that. It's a group, I guess.
Yeah, I guess a group.
I think pages are things that you can only respond to, but so it's the training officer. Is that how it's stated, the training officer?
Yeah, and that was something that I kind of came up with when I went down to training. So my bio in there about the page or the group was early on when I started, and it was basically to be a platform to share training ideas, information throughout. Whoever wanted to share, post on there, and just kind of have basically a platform to talk fire stuff. Kind of keep fire stuff more to my training page and more family stuff to my regular page. But that's kind of where that came from.
Yeah, and that's just one of the, there's so many of them out there, so many great pages, and I like getting on there and then just getting information, getting training tips, getting good stuff without having to worry about any of the bad crap. So I definitely want to kind of steer people towards that as well. A good place to get some good information for. So you said you're a training officer right now, so obviously that's the direction I'm going to start, just because I love training. That's one of the topics that I really enjoy getting into. So we're definitely going to be digging into that. And I was kind of thinking on the way home this morning that this is a conversation that two things I'm excited about. I'm looking forward to talking with you, getting to know you, hearing what you have to say about these things. But there's also a little bit of me that is a little bit nervous about this conversation because it is a topic that I have gained a lot of passion for here lately. And to me, it seems like the more passion I gain in certain areas, the more frustration I gain in those areas too, because of everything around you, if you know what I mean. And I know you know what I mean. So it's just a conversation I'm going to have to, just pay attention to what I'm saying. But I am looking forward to this very much. I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. there's definitely some frustrations with it.
So I met you I believe it was in October. We had a Fools Conference, Mid-America Fools Conference. And man, it was awesome. It had some like nationally known, top-notch speakers the first day, had some great hot classes the second day that I was lucky enough to be a part of, kind of that instructor group. But talk to us a little bit about kind of your involvement in the Fools and kind of what that means to you. And I know it's not just that one. That was my first one, but I know you've been involved before that. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I was wanting to join the Fools a lot earlier. It was just a commitment thing. I didn't want to commit to that if I couldn't be all in, because we had a lot of stuff going on at the house, with the kids, sports, and trying to attend the meetings regularly and stuff. Because that was one thing that I wanted to make sure that I could do, was if I was going to become a member, to actually be involved and be able to go out and help instruct and teach those different things. So that really came to fruition whenever I joined training. Court Smith, the president of the Fools, actually got me to come down there and get to be part of it, because for a while our group kind of had the mantra, or not the mantra, but kind of had the image of, oh, those guys are just a bunch of jerks that don't do anything, and that was what we were trying to change, was our purpose, which is provide free training, and get out and help those departments and those others that can't necessarily make it, or pay for that kind of training. So once I got into that and got into the true, the word I'm looking for, the true purpose of the Fools, that helped a lot, and being involved in training. And man, I have to tell you, getting out and getting to meet some of the guys that come to that training from different departments, just spreads that network, getting that network going, and getting to actually, and even instructing at some of those conferences, or at that conference, at some of our classes. Not only were we instructing, but man, I learned from that. There's so much different stuff from different departments that you can learn from, even though you're instructing the actual station. So yeah, that was a big thing. And kind of the cool thing about it is, what that's evolved to is, every member of our training staff now with the fire department is part of the Fools, and they're all active. It's nice to have our officers at training that are active in the Fools, and they understand, kind of our purpose and our mission. So that's kind of where that came from. And then the biggest thing that got me to join was, and once I delivered it to the wife, is I had full support from her. So once I got her support, she comes to the meetings with me, and she's all in on it too, which is awesome. That helps a lot, because once you have that support from home and support from the wife, that really helps also.
Yeah, that was a pretty cool deal for me, and I really enjoyed kind of making some connections. Like I said, I met several of your other Oklahoma City brothers there that I had not known. For those that don't know, the department I work for is literally the north city above Oklahoma City, so we're right next to each other. But you guys you're so big, and so it's hard to really have any kind of relationships with your firefighters without having something like that to kind of start that. But it's also a place that, I met quite a few out-of-state people. Our friend LJ, amazing dude. I was very lucky to have him on a couple times ago and just share some of his energy and positivity. And so I really enjoyed meeting, the people out there that are fired up to do better.
Yeah. Hey, you just got a tip of his energy on that podcast. That guy, man, he's something else. He's a good dude.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So this is where this is something I really want to dig into, because when I heard you say it on the scrap, it just really hit me like, man, I could not agree anymore. And so I don't care if we spend the whole time talking about this one subject. I know there's a lot there. But so on the scrap, he's got his 5 questions for firefighters. And the first one is the number one problem in the fire service, in your opinion. And your answer was just basically the just breaking it down to the Cliff Note version was a lack of humility. And we'll go into that further, what you meant by that. But once you said that, and once you started describing it, it's like, oh my gosh, that is literally probably the biggest frustration I'm dealing with right now, is exactly what you described. And so if you don't mind kind of describing a little bit again about why you said that, and the explanation that you gave there.
So that kind of stems from when I was a firefighter before I promoted to driver. I had a couple different officers that we'd go out and train, and they would be right out there in the middle of it with us. They'd be full gear with the pack, sweating, getting their butt kicked just like we were. And if they screwed up, it wasn't a big deal to them. And for us as firefighters, that created buy-in. And they're like, oh, I mean, that's our officer. If he's out here messing up, screw it up, and it's not a big deal because we're training, then that's okay for us to screw up. I mean, it kind of opened that door and allowed for that. So as that went on, I tried to keep that same trait because I respected that as a firefighter. So when I promoted and made driver, there was times where I would be riding out or being the acting officer for the shift. I kept that back in the back of my head. Anytime we did any training, I was not dressed or did anything different than what the guys that were doing in the back. So I think having the humility to be able to do that and put yourself out there, because you're going to screw up. I mean, it's going to happen. Heck, I still do it now, going out and teaching whatever recruit classes. There's times where I haven't thrown a ladder for a while, so I'll get there and go throw a ladder and I'll jack it up, or it won't be perfect. But they see that and they see that that's okay. You know, they see that they've got a training officer that's training them for their job that screws up in front of them, and it's not a big deal because he's just trying to get back better at what he was doing. So that's kind of where that came from. But then I've seen that in the field, having crews come down. The opposite side of it is having that officer, that major, that driver, whoever, oh, I just want to see what my firefighters can do, so I'm gonna let them kind of run through the drill, and then stand back and not be any part of it. Well, in my opinion, I mean, to an extent, I can see how that could be beneficial if you've got an upcoming driver and you want to see him, how he responds when he's acting up or when he's riding out, if he was in command for a short term or whatever. But for the most part, seeing some of those officers come out, I think a lot of it is the lack of the humility or the lack of wanting to look bad per se in front of their crew. And I think that's a big issue, because I see it not just our department, I see it outside trainings and stuff. You get some of those guys that kind of stand back, kind of standoffish because they're afraid of what they're going to screw up in front of everybody.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my basis behind that.
Yeah. It's fun. I think, he called me spur of the moment one day and asked me if I could do an episode with him that night, because somebody else had a change of plans. And I think it was the episode right before yours or something like that. But it's like, after you said that, and even listen to you talking right now, it's like I want to go back and change my answer, because I cannot agree more with you. And like I started this whole thing out with, I have to kind of try to keep an even keel here, because this is an area that I do have a lot of passion for, and that I do agree completely with you that we are not doing good at. We need to be better at this. And a lot of it goes back to, I'm a big Jocko guy. I feel like I'm getting to be more and more of a Jocko guy every day. But, if you listen to some of his things, he's got that one episode where he talks about what excuses are. And excuses are lies. They're all lies. They're all lies that we tell ourselves. And everything you just said right there, that those are excuses. No, okay, if I'm an officer, I'm a station officer, and so I get that I want to give my driver a chance to ride up and get that experience so that he's more prepared for the next level. Okay, well then when that happens, I'm a firefighter. I'm riding backwards. I'm doing something in that scenario. So
heck, that's your chance to get on the
I'm
nozzle.
right there with him. Yeah, Well, yeah, I mean, you're right there with them. So the excuse of I want to watch him, that's stupid because I'm right there with him. I'm watching him right there as I'm doing work, and right there, I am getting work in that is going to help me and help everybody else at the same time. It's just I'm so tired of excuses. I'm so freaking sick of excuses. It's this or that hurts, or it's too hot, too cold. It's just there's just so much going on, and I'm tired of it. I just don't want to hear it anymore. And so, like I said, I just keep saying it over and over. I can't agree with you more because there's so much good that a station officer can get out of involving himself in training. And so that's exactly where I am as well.
Yeah, and I've been part of crews where they dread to get out and train, and I've been part of crews where they look forward to it. It all depends on, and both of those times, or both those instances, depends on the officer's attitude.
Yeah.
And I've been a part of a crew where they would wait until the regular officer was off, and I was acting up to want to go out and train on their apparatus operator academies book, or
Yeah.
go out and pull hand lines or whichever, because I was right there in the middle of it. And I'm not trying to boast or brag or anything, but that's what created the buy-in, and that's what made them want. And we'd go out, and I tried not to train for all day long. My plan would be go out and do 45 minutes, 30, 45 minutes, just something to get. And we ended up being out there for 3 or 4 hours because
Yeah.
they want to try something new, or they want to try something different, or they want to see how this works. So, I mean, it really, it helps. What's the word? It kind of breeds itself, if you just get out there and be part of it. And yeah, I'm with you. It's the excuses. It's raining out. Well, do we fight fire and rain? It's cold out. Well, do we fight fire when it's cold? I mean, come on. There's you got to give me something better than that. But yeah, I'm with you. It's extremely frustrating.
Yeah, that's kind of, and I've talked with a couple of different people about kind of lots of pieces of these conversations I've had with other people. And like, I believe Todd Edwards, we talked about kind of this same deal. And that's me too. I have never asked my guys, and I say guys because that's all I have. So I've never asked my guys to work 8 hours in training, or 6 hours of training. I mean, it's literally like you just said. Give me 45 minutes of working our butts off. Give me an hour. Give me 2 hours of just good stuff where we're learning and getting something better out of the day, and we're done. As long as there's nothing else that has to be done, I'm done. I don't care what you do the rest of the day. Take it easy, enjoy your day, because we're probably going to be up at night. And so I just don't understand why it's so hard to buy into that, especially when you have somebody, or even two people in your crew that are trying, or that are putting so much effort into it, and showing you that they're going to do every single thing that they ask you to do. I just don't understand why it's so hard to want to buy into that.
Yeah, and we kind of talked about that. One of our classes we put together for our new sergeants, our new drivers, and our lieutenant's academy. And it's funny because we've been doing this since I've been at training, me and Court, but we have a class called street level leadership, which is the same thing LJ labeled his stuff that he's kind of coming up with and talking about. And there's no correlation whatsoever. We didn't know anything about that. But anyway, so we talk about that. And that's kind of one of the things we talk about. What we ask the new drivers. So you get assigned to a station when you're promoted, and you have a crew that's all in except for that one. You got that 1, 10, 15, 20-year firefighter that just thinks everything you say, everything you guys do training wise is stupid. How do you deal with that? What do you do? And our answer to them is keep doing you, keep training those guys. That guy's going to be on an island. If he's out there just chirping, talking crap about all, have him go inside, go sit in the recliner. You don't have to be part of it. If you just want to be negative about the whole thing, and eventually he's either one of two things. He's going to buy in and he's going to be involved, or he's going to want to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And part of that too is initially whenever he's being that negativity, thinks it's all stupid, then ask him if he's got a better way. Do you have a better way? What do you have better information? What am I wrong at? And if he can't explain himself, which more than likely probably won't be able to, depending on what you're training on, then I mean that's just him. He's like I said, he's going to buy in, or he's going to go sit on the couch. I mean,
Yeah.
that's kind of how you handle that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's something that, if you are in that situation, it is a very challenging situation for an officer. You try to go about it in different ways. You try to find different ways to inspire somebody, find different ways to really reach somebody. And, if none of those work, you're just kind of at a point where it's like, I don't know what else to do. I've kind of come to the conclusion here lately is that, you know, there is a point when me as an officer, I have taken somebody as far as I can take. I can't take them any further. So, that could be because of good circumstances or bad circumstances. Either way, I can't do anything else to make this person any better. So at that point, it's just time for that seat to open up to somebody else that's ready to learn, ready to get better, ready to do things to make things better. And that's kind of what my mind has changed to here lately is, I'm going to try my best. I'm going to try everything I can possibly think of to get you to buy into what I'm selling. I'm going to try my best to make you a better firefighter, a better person, everything. But there is a point that I can't do anymore. And so at that point, it's time for me to try to do it for somebody else. Do you kind of agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're gonna have those guys that are just, I mean, they don't care. They see their fire department job as their day off because they've got a home building business on the side or whatever, and they come to the station to relax and not do anything. They could care less. They'll do the bare minimum and that's it. And those guys, I mean, like I said, eventually as a crew will train enough that they're just going to want out or they're going to get involved. Hopefully they want to get involved, but more than likely it's going to be one of those ones that they want out. So at that point, it's a fact of just getting somebody there, get a new guy, get a recruit, get a newer firefighter, somebody that's engaged, somebody that's willing, that want to learn, to be able to take advantage of that environment rather than wasting on this one individual that could give two craps about being on the job.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's a point where there's just nothing else you can do.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that you were lucky enough to be a part of a crew that had, some of the higher ranking people pushing that stuff, being a part of training, inspiring you to be better. Now that you've been a part of that, now that you have seen crews in action as the training officer, just I'm sure all kinds of crews, speak to us a little bit about the importance and how much difference the officers make in those crews. As you got one person that's like you talked about, that's a great attitude, that's doing work with his people, that's getting better with his people, that's teaching his people, and then everywhere from in between to the opposite end of the spectrum. And talk a little bit about the importance of that.
So it's extremely important. And I've been pretty fortunate because most of my time at Oklahoma City, I've been stationed at chief stations. I would say by choice, but really I didn't have any say in the matter. But I enjoyed being at our chief stations because they have the most amount of crew or the most amount of personnel, and they're always usually engaged. They're doing something. Usually that is a good group of people that are engaged in the job and they're always doing something. So I always found that as the environment I wanted to be part of. Now, there have been times where I've been at stations, whether loaned or temporarily at a station where we had an officer. In fact, I was at a station for a few months as a firefighter where we had an officer that when we came in at 6 o'clock and usually 6:50 or 6:30, he'd go to his office, shut his door, and we wouldn't see him until 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And it just set the mood when I first got there for that station that it was basically nap time until dinner, or right after we ate breakfast till dinner. And it was just, Some of the longest days I've had at the
Yeah.
station. It's just like, oh my gosh, what are we doing? So that he kind of set the mood for that. But then you go on the opposite side of it where you have a station officer's like, hey, okay, gets together with everybody in the morning. Hey, this is our daily routine. This is what we're doing today. And we're going to start with, we're going to train on this for such and such time frame. So we're like, okay, so we know what we're doing. Hey, get your workout in. Then we're going to go out, we're going to train. Everybody knows what's going on. And we go out and train, and then bam, right out there in the middle of it with us, right? Doing everything that we're doing, trying new things, taking advice from the firefighters all the way to the officers, and just being involved, which to me made it fun. Made it, I was enjoyed it more. And we had some of the guys in the crew that would be complaining about, oh, why are we doing this in full gear? Why are we wearing a pack? Well, for instance, one of the train, and I remember it to this day, and this was several years ago, we're pulling the hand line or pre-connect off the rig, Metro load, and one of the firefighters is pulling it. When he goes to pull it, he goes to lay it down, and it hangs up on his pack, and it messes up the load. And I was like, well, that would have not happened if we weren't in full gear with a pack on, just like we'd be doing it on scene. So that even further validated that we're going to wear everything that we need to wear every time when we're out there training with that stuff, because those are the kind of hiccups that you don't foresee when you get on scene. Now, granted, there's times where we won't, there's training not in full gear. I get that. And that's not always the case, but there's got to be that, happy medium where we're still training in our full gear. So back to answer your question, you can have the officer that doesn't do anything, then you can have the officer that's out there engaged full gear. But then I've also had the officer that is out there, wants to do the training, comes up with the training, hey, we're going to go do this, but then is standing there with the stopwatch on a clipboard in his shorts and t-shirt, making sure everybody's hitting these marks and kind of over or micromanages the whole thing. And that's another part of it. That's just as bad as the one that doesn't want to do anything, because that's what makes it unenjoyable. Because then the guys feel like, okay, this is a test, this is an exam. Every time we're training, they're turned off before you can get out there. So I'd say that'd be the difference in the officers and kind of the experience.
Yeah, definitely. So, kind of something else that a big thought that I've had here lately is, when I have struggled with certain areas of leadership or situations, I try to kind of think back to when I was a firefighter, and I had officers that I really enjoyed and I had officers that I didn't enjoy, and kind of putting myself back in those shoes. Because I think it's easy for us to forget that. We'll get into situations where it's like, man, I just don't understand why this just isn't working. Well, there's an easy way to kind of start figuring that out, is to go back, because you were a firefighter at some point. And so you can put yourself in that spot and think, okay, what motivated me back then? What kind of shut me off back then? And so that's kind of been something I've used to work through some things. But I think one of the things that I most enjoy, the first officer I ever had, was Captain Horn. He's a battalion chief now, but what I loved about him is that, like we've been talking about, he was involved in things. Everything we did, he was involved in it. But he also competed with us. If it was doing pull-ups, he was right there. If it was putting your gear on for a time, he was right there. And he was very hard to beat if you could beat him at all. And to me, that was a challenge. And I'm not going to let a captain beat me at getting dressed. That's ridiculous. And you got to think that the fire service is probably full of athletes. I almost want to say that it absolutely is, but I'm sure there are people out there that weren't athletes. But for the most part, the fire service is full of people at some point that were athletes, some point had a competitive drive, and that's what they love to do. And so I want to kind of use that as an officer now to do that same thing to my people, get out there and then be involved in everything, put them under the time, or put them in a competition, do some masking out stuff, do some door forcing for time, because I want that to be a challenge for them. And sometimes it's like I don't feel that that need to compete or that sense that they care. And it's like, I just don't understand it. I mean, I don't know where that went, because I know at some point it was there. Do you see that as kind of maybe something that can help or can hurt in some of those situations?
I think a lot of that depends on how it's delivered. So as the officer, I think the biggest thing is if you can perform what you're expecting at the level that you're expecting it, then you're going to get way better buy-in than if you can't perform what you're expecting or what you're requiring, if that makes any sense. So for
Yeah.
instance, say you have an 8-second mask up time, or that's what you're wanting, but you can't do it in less than 20.
Yeah.
Well, then immediately your guys below you be like, he can't even do it in that time. So why should we have to do that? And then you respond with, well, it's because you're on the back and I'm the officer. Okay, that's the wrong way to go with that deal.
Yeah.
Completely wrong way to go with that deal. The right way to go with that deal is, look, I've worked on this. I can do this in 8 seconds. I would like this to be our crew standard. This should be our standard for our crew to be able to do this in 8 seconds, and then go from there with that. And again, you can still have that one guy that's just like, I ain't doing it. I mean, it happens. For our department, 900 something guys out there, you're not going to have 100% buy-in with 900 something members. I mean, it's just not going to happen. An ideal world, yeah, that'd be awesome. Not going to happen. So I think that's the biggest thing for the officers. As long as you can perform what you're expecting, then I think you'll get better buy-in than if you can't.
Yeah,
that's
definitely, I would definitely agree with that. And I think that just like skyrockets that respect and skyrockets that buy-in, because it means even more. So, okay, I'm an officer. There's probably a 1% chance I'm going to be pulling a line on a fire, a 1% chance I'm going to be forcing a door at a fire. So if I'm sitting there at the station or training or whatever, and I'm able to do these things in a certain time frame, that's a above minimal standard time frame, and expecting you to be the same, that should be fuel for them to say, oh, this guy doesn't even do this stuff, and he works at it enough that he's that good at it. I would think that would make you want to be better at it yourself. I would hope so. So yeah, I think that is a huge key to that whole thing.
Yeah, and again, that falls back on the basics of setting the example.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to do. It's so easy if you have the crew that's involved, to just, for instance, just go out in the rig room, and say you've got a woods door out in the rig room, which we had this in the past at one station does that, and just start tinkering with it, with the Halligan, forcing the door and stuff. Next thing you know, you get another guy over there. Hey, well, how are we doing this?
Yeah.
Let's try this. And then next thing you know, then all of a sudden you've got almost the whole station out there, and you've been out there for 3 hours till like 10:30 at night, and everybody's just been training for 3 hours, and you're ending with who can force the door the fastest, single person.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, everybody's like, well, I can do it, the fastest, or I can do it. And then you got everybody trying to do it in under, 30, 45 seconds. And little they know, you just created a 3-hour training session and competition, and everybody was out there getting their hands on tools. Yeah. I mean, it's
yeah.
So
yeah, that's a culture thing, man. And like I said earlier, that would be the scenario you just gave. That would not be something that I expect. I would not ask them to be out there for 3 hours at night. But man, that is like one of the ultimate goals right there, is just to create a crew, create an environment, to inspire a crew to be like that, to get out there and just want to get better, want to enjoy that time, because it is fun. If you aren't having fun doing these things, something is wrong. I don't know if it's your mindset, your attitude, if it's the way that the training is put on, but all of this stuff is fun. It should be fun, because it's what we do. It's why we are here doing this job. It's just kind of a pretend way of doing it, but it's still fun. And so, yeah, that's kind of a culture goal right there, I would say, for myself.
Yeah. And I would say too, Jeremy, on that, as a new officer or officer to a new station, a lot of that and that culture stems on your initial approach with that crew. So, for instance, come into that as a new officer or new officer to that station, putting the hammer down. This is what's going to happen. We're going to do this every shift, versus coming in and especially as like a young officer as I was, because I made driver when I had like 6.5 years on, and I go to a single company house and I've got a senior firefighter that's been at that station for 11, 12 years that knows everything about that rig in that district. And if I came in and said, all right, I'm driving this rig, I don't need your help, I'll figure it out, I know where we're going, period, would have been a complete different response than when I came in and said, hey, I'm new here, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know this rig, you've been here longer. Even when I was riding out, hey, Mark, technically you're driving and riding out because I have no clue where we're going, I have no clue what's going on, you've been here for this long. So that right there, I think, starts the foundation of that buy-in, of that culture, to allow them to let them know that you're not there to just push them around because you made rank, but you're there to be part of the crew and kind of learn from them. So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, to start that culture, start that buy-in.
Yeah, for sure. And that's something else that you see quite a bit is you get people that promote and they feel the need, or maybe even they've been told that once you cross that threshold, once you are an officer, once you have some type of formal leadership responsibility, that you have to ditch the relationships, you have to separate yourself and become, something above everybody else. And I think that is such a bull crap statement. You cannot have a good solid culture if you don't build those relationships, if you don't build the respect from your people. That is exactly what you're saying right there. That is, and I agree with you, that has to be the foundation of anything that you want to create that's good.
I think too, as an officer, you have to be more personable.
Yep.
You've got to be, you got to be involved with these guys, be involved with your crew, guys, gals, whoever. And like LJ kind of talked about, knowing not only your guys, but knowing their families, knowing them by name, knowing birthdays, knowing everything about them. So they know, that shows that you genuinely care. And by doing that, you do genuinely care, rather than just being another firefighter on the back of the rig. And that's absolutely a big part of it.
Yep. No, like I said when we started this, I think this is a huge topic that we all need to hear. We all need to hear what some of these issues are causing. We all need to hear how to get better in some of these areas. And where it all started was humility, being able to put yourself in a spot where, you're probably going to mess up sometimes. It's all right. It's not that big of a deal. I mean, you're obviously not going to get fired for it. Okay, you get made fun of for it a little bit maybe, but what do you do around the fire station that you don't get made fun of? I mean, seriously, that's part of who we are. It's, it's going to happen. And so being able to put that ego aside and say, you know what, this is not even my job, but it's your job. And I know that if I am out here trying to learn it, I can give you a little bit of faith that it's okay for you to learn it and not be scared to mess up. But also, I think another big piece of this is I want to know this stuff good enough that I can be able to teach it myself. Even though it's not my job, I am responsible for the training of my people. And we can go into this if you want to. I'm sure you probably have an opinion of this, but you hear a lot of people taking the stance that training is the training divisions, that's their job. And it's just not feasible. It doesn't matter what size of department, your department is huge compared to mine, but my department is huge compared to some. And it doesn't matter the training divisions of those departments, respective of how big they are, they cannot be responsible for all of the training of that department. It's our job as a station officer. So if I'm not out there doing it, I'm not capable of teaching that. And so what are your thoughts on that topic?
Yeah, I agree 100%. So we kind of started a new model in our training division. We've got a daily or a training committee, as you say, outside of the training officers. And originally, it kind of followed the model of Chief Thompson's at the colony, as far as having certain training for having coaches that go out and train their districts and so on. And kind of the hurdle that we found recently, because I just recently did we did a hose handling class initially, and we got like 4 or 5 members from each district, from each shift. So we did 3 different days of training, and those guys are supposed to go back and teach their crews or their districts. And one of the hurdles we found there was, well, they didn't remember everything they were taught or whatever. So the next one we did was a search one that I put on, or that we put on as training staff. And we provided them with the PowerPoint. We provided them with videos of the skills of the different victim drags, carries, window exits, entries, all that kind of stuff. But we only got, due to Corona and all that stuff going on, we only got like 1 per district. So now you've got a district coach, 1 per district for 6 districts, that now has to go out and teach 6 stations of that district. So that was kind of a I guess destined to fail model, because that one person's now responsible for 6 stations.
Yeah.
So kind of what we put out there was, take this back, use your station as a guinea pig, train these guys up on that information, and then use those guys to help with the rest of the stations in your district. But we've still had a disconnect somewhere where these guys out in the field aren't getting the consistent training that we've put out. Because in the past, we'd have every rig from every shift come down to training, go through the training, and then go back to the field. Well, you know as well as I do, doing that with 38, 39 stations and all those rigs, that takes a month and a half, and it's a nightmare for staffing. So that's why we're trying to get around that by having district coaches go out. And it's a work in progress. We're still trying to figure out the best way to go about it, but it's very challenging, that's for sure. And I agree 100%. I think it falls back on the station officer. If you have a crew that can't perform on a fire scene, 100% station officer's responsibility, because he's responsible for training those guys. Now, back to what you were saying about, you want to make sure that you're training them right or train them correctly. There's nothing to say that you couldn't use the training staff as a reference.
Yeah.
We've tried putting out videos and lesson plans on Target Solutions is our platform that we use to allow that officer to go and say he wants to do forcible entry for that day. He can go find that video, watch what we do for forcible entry, and then find that lesson plan, kind of school himself up on it, look at it, see what needs to be done, and then turn around and go out and say, hey guys, we're going to do forcible entry today. This is what we're going to do. But that's kind of I would say the last minute way to go about it. I think the best way to go about it would be staying up on your stuff, reading the material, performing the skills, going to the conferences, going to outside training as an officer. I think that's the responsibility of the officer, in my opinion.
Yeah.
If you got an officer that's, the biggest thing that I was nervous about when I promoted, Jeremy, was when I promoted, I went to a single company house. My station officer was there for about 2 shifts before he was off for about a month. Now I'm responsible for not only myself, but the other 3 firefighters on that rig, which is a huge deal. I mean, if you're not nervous about that, then you shouldn't be in that position. But not only am I responsible for that, I'm also responsible for their families.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big deal. So I think 100% it's on the officer.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that I kind of talked about, I don't know, a week or so ago. And how I describe it is, it's the weight of leadership. And that I can't describe it any better than that, because that's what it is. There is a weight to this. It's heavy. If you don't feel that weight of responsibility as a officer, as a station officer, especially, or a chief or whatever, if you are personally responsible for a crew or more, you should be feeling a weight on you, because there should be a weight on you. There is a lot of responsibility. And if you aren't, and you really need to look at how you are approaching the job, because you have a lot on your plate, and that needs to be something that's present as that, as an officer.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Something else that I guess you could kind of tie into this, and it's something else you touched on a little bit on the scrap, the why. And this is another thing that I really, it's something that we need to hear. Why is it so hard for us to just give a why? Why is asking why such a big deal? Why?
Yeah, no, I agree. And, I've gotten kicked back on that because, in fact, I posted something about that on my training officers page about or I commented on something about with who's being hired, the generations that are being hired now, they want to know the why. Okay. So when I got hired, it was keep your mouth shut, you're a neck downer, do what you're told. That's it,
Yeah.
which is fine. That's how I was, it's kind of how I was raised. That's just how I do things. But now the newer generation, they want to know, why are we doing this? Why are we forcing the door this way? Why are we pulling the hand line this way? And in my opinion, as a training officer, as an officer, period, whoever, as an instructor, if you can't explain that why, then why are you even in that position? You should be able to explain every why to what you're actually training on. And the kickback I get is, well, there's no reason for questions or being asked why on the fire ground. Well, I'm not talking about on the fire ground. There's time and place for that.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about in training. Okay. So from my experience, it's always training for me for the most part. And it's usually recruits or not always recruits. Sometimes, like, we've even had officers say, hey, so why are you guys stretching hose like that? Or why are you moving hose like that through pinch points? And we'll explain it to them. And to be honest, Jeremy, we actually had an officer here not too long ago during our live burns that we do for the guys out in the field. They came in and they had an issue kind of getting to the fire room initially because we have a hose stretch through our tower and into our burn rooms. It's challenging if you don't go about it the right way. And he's like, man, why did that take us so long? How are you guys teaching the recruits? So we showed him, and it was probably 2 or 3 months later, that station officer comes back and says, man, we did it exactly. We've been training on how you said, or how you guys have been teaching the recruits, and we tried it, and we freaking killed it. It's made it so much easier. And it, again, explaining the why. Why do you do it that way?
Yeah.
So absolutely. I mean, I don't understand, and I'm with you. Why is it so hard to explain that? And I think the main reason why it's hard for most people to explain it is because they don't have the answer. They don't know why. Yeah. It's just how we've always done it. It's just, why do you use a fog nozzle? Well, that's because we've all used. Why use smoothbore? Well, that's what we've all used. There's no information behind it. And I think that's the biggest thing, man.
Yeah.
It's frustrating.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of exactly how I would answer it is there's frustration from that side of people getting asked that question because they don't know, and it frustrates them, I think, not only because they don't know, but because it's almost like they feel like they're called out on it. But tying this into what we just spent however many minutes on, it's about humility. It goes back to humility. Be humble enough to say, man, to be honest, I don't know. That's how we've always done it, but that doesn't mean it's the right way to do it. Maybe we need to, what do you got any more ideas to, just be humble enough to say, I don't know, this is how it is. And I don't have any answer for you. And no, that's not the end answer. You need to find an answer for that.
Yes.
But it's okay to say, man, I don't know. You got me. But I just, like you just described, it's important to me as an officer to be given a why. If I'm passed down a new policy or a new mask mandate, I want to know why we're doing this stuff, especially if it doesn't make any sense to me. So why would I not expect people below me to have that same courtesy given to them? That's probably another way to look at it for those that do get upset about that.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because not only should you, as an officer, want the why so you can explain that to your guys, but in turn, regardless of what you think about it, regardless of who it came from, you absolutely have to turn around and say, hey, look, guys, this is what we're doing from now on. This is what our boss wants to do. Not turn around and say, hey, look, I know this is bull crap. I think it's stupid too. This stupid information. It's all, it's all doesn't make any sense, but we're gonna do this. You can't go that route. You gotta take the ownership as the officer to say, hey, look, this is what we've been told to do. This is what we're gonna do without any of your negative opinions, because as soon as you put that negativity out there, that's exactly what you're going to get from your guys. Well, Cat
Yep.
thinks this is freaking stupid. So why are we even doing this crap? So you
Yep.
can't, I mean, it's hard. And again, it's part of being humble and the humility part of it, because you got to be able to just suck it up and say, all right, I got to do what's right for my guys, not what I think is right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And that's kind of, you bringing that up, that leads into a story that it kind of tells on myself. And I know I've talked about this with somebody, but that was the environment that I allowed to create a couple years ago. That was me. I was that person that shoved that responsibility off on people above me. I was the person that didn't back anything. I was the person that was irritated at everything that came down and disgruntled, and allowed that negativity. And so now that I have grown, now that I have seen the faults in that, now that I know better, I am I am fighting a battle that I created because I allowed that to happen. That is the environment I allowed to create and was a big part of. And so in an attempt to flip that switch and become the opposite of that, I'm having to deal with a lot of crap that I shouldn't have if I never would have done that. So that is definitely a conversation that newer people need to listen to as well. As if that is you, if you are allowing those things to happen, if you are taking that responsibility and putting it above you and not backing those people, then you're creating you're creating an environment that you're going to not enjoy to be a part of here potentially pretty soon.
yeah. Yeah. And I've been guilty of it. I mean, just with the recent stuff, thinking what's right or what's not right or what's BS or what's not BS. But
Yeah.
again, it's one of those times where you got to check yourself and remember your audience and kind of go back and say, okay, if I don't do this, I'm going to create something that I'm going to end up fighting, like you said, down the road. So yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that's not even, as a station officer, yeah, but also as a training officer. So having, we're fixing to start an academy next week of 30, 34. We've got to set the example as training officers. Right, wrong, and different of what we think about anything that's going on or what we're doing through the academy. To have this academy, we have to set that example. And I kind of got checked myself here just a week or so ago by one of our training officers or one of our majors. Like, we have to set the example. And I'll put it out there. For example, the mask mandate. We have to wear masks throughout training. Everybody wears masks, even during PT, unless they're 6 feet apart, even on the drill field, everything. Do I agree with it? No. But like my major said, we have to set that example. If we expect those 34 recruits to do what we're asking, then us as training officers have to do the same. So,
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's just, you permit what you promote, or promote what you permit, however that goes. So yeah, absolutely. It's definitely it starts with you. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's, I'm trying to think of the way that I've heard that as well in a different direction. Well, how is it? It's basically your culture is what you, I can't remember. You probably said it better than I'm saying it, but your culture is basically what you allow. If you're allowing things to slide, that's where your culture is going, and that's kind of what I'm getting at is the things that you do that aren't great things officers should be doing sooner or later are going to come back to bite you. And so that's that's just like we talked about earlier, you got to be willing to mess up. You got to be okay with making mistakes. Well, that's kind of what I'm doing here, is telling on myself, telling everybody out there that this is an area that I have messed up. And so hopefully others might learn a little bit from that before they make the same mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we could beat this horse all day long, but like you said, everybody's going to mess up. Everybody's
Yeah.
at some point in time, somebody's going to screw. Nobody's perfect. So just accept it. Accept that fact. And man, I tell you, I think I learned that lesson more as a training officer and training some of the recruits, because you got recruits that'll come in that, they were school teachers or insurance agents or what, know nothing about the fire service. So they don't know what you know and what you don't know.
Yeah.
But yet you get out there and you teach a skill and then you screw up. Well, they may know you screwed up or they may not, but it doesn't matter, because you're out there showing them and you tell them, hey, look, I screwed that up. We got to back up. We got to back up a few steps here, and we're going to start back at ground zero because that was the incorrect way.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, okay. Well, we didn't even know we messed up. Well, yeah, you didn't know I messed up. I told you, but I told you because we have to do it this way. This way is the correct way. And that was my fault for instructing the wrong way. So yeah, it's going to happen. I mean, that's what's frustrating about it too. Like we talked about, the frustration is you're going to screw up. So just allow it. I mean, just accept the fact. How hard is that?
Own
Instead
it,
of hiding
move
behind
on,
it.
man.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah. That's something that became more and more apparent here lately to me is, there are so many leadership books and so many good leadership books. There's so many podcasts, and you just overwhelming information and just resources for leadership. But really the most important things about leadership, they're not hard. It's just, you're taking care of people. You're doing the right thing as best you can. You're taking responsibility when you mess up. It's just, there's not much more than that. I mean, and of course you can, it goes deeper than that. Obviously, I'm very, very much simplifying it, but really when it comes down to it, if you're taking care of the people you're responsible for, if you're doing things as best as you can, making the best choices you can, what else is there, that you need to do? I mean, that's a pretty good start on leadership right there.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you and I both know as well that typically the ones that should be seeking this stuff out or reading this stuff or listening to this stuff are not the ones that are looking for it.
Yeah.
They're usually, they could care less. They've got their way, they're set in their way, but that's not to say they couldn't be turned around by a firefighter or a driver or whatever below them, just doing the right thing. And then they see that and they're like, this guy's kind of getting it. So, and then they may read one article just because you left it out on the kitchen table, or they may listen to one podcast because they hear you and another guy talking about it. And that could be the switch that flips. And they're like, oh, I'm into this now. So yeah, I 100% believe you can lead from any level, from the recruit all the way to the fire chief. It doesn't have to, and we preach that to our recruits. It's been said several times, water boils from the bottom up, and that's kind of what we're using kind of to get our department on track. Because we got recruits that come out to the field, and guys in the field are like, why are you handling a 2.5 that way? Or why are you, in fact, we've had a comment, why are you doing we don't do one man 24 carries. That'll just get you hurt. And we're just like, they come out to the field proficient in that skill. And then we got guys that have been on for a while that have kind of been checked out. They're like, no, we don't do it that way. So it starts from the bottom. I mean, it really does. And it's going to be a several year process, but eventually we can get a consistency across the department.
Yeah. No, that's good stuff. And I again, we could sit here and talk all day about kind of this kind of topic and everything that feeds off of it, and dog legs here and rabbit holes there. And I would love that. I know that you would like to kind of get into a little bit of search culture. So we'll change gears a little bit and talk about some search. And I know you want to get some word out on the Firefighter Rescue Survey.com. And I know Brian Brush has been doing a lot of kind of PR, I would say, with that this year. It's almost like it seems to be a personal mission of his. And so get into that. We'll kind of start heading that direction and talk about the survey and whatever else you need to share with us.
Yeah. So I would say with the guys that actually run the website stuff, Brush added me to their little chat group. I'm very little part of it. I haven't really done anything with the website or anything. I'm actually pretty kind of wonder why I'm even in their little chat group, to be honest. But no, he added me because for a while back, I tried to get to where we could submit our rescues or our grabs through that website. And there was some concern of what information would be put on the site and it being a public platform. So I wanted, and this is about a year and a half ago, so I wanted to create some way we could record our rescues as a department. And like Chief Brush says, as far as recording our wins, not only just our losses.
Yeah.
So I got to messing around with our Microsoft Office and Microsoft Forms and basically created a survey for our department that mimics, it's pretty much the questions from Firefighter Rescue Survey. And I give them all the credit. In fact, their website's actually listed on our forms, and created that to where our guys from our department could go in and put in their rescues or their grabs. And then Microsoft Forms automatically populates that to a data graph, pie graph kind of stuff. And then once I dug further into it, there was an actual, I could see on firefighterrescuesurvey.com on Google Maps, you can create a Google map. So essentially like what they have. So I did the same for OKCFD. And then once you get the data in Microsoft Forms, you can create that into an Excel or populate an Excel sheet and then embed that into Google Maps and allow it to mark those incidents by incident address. And that creates that Google Maps and it shows the incident, the actual address. And then when you click on it, it'll show the actual information of that rescue. So I did that internally for our department. Me and some of the other training officers kind of worked on it together. And that's where we've been recording our rescues. Then just recently, Chief Brush, we had a rescue here this last month or so. And Chief Brush has been sending out a formal email to the departments anytime he gets a Google alert as far as nationwide rescues. Well, he sent one to our administration, and our deputy chief contacted me. He's like, "Hey man, have you seen this? Did you get the email? Have you put in this information?" And I was like, "Well, I haven't yet." So I talked to that chief and we communicated back and forth. And he's like, "Yeah, man, as long as there's not any HIPAA violation," which there's not. Obviously,
yeah.
Firefighter Rescue Survey wouldn't do that. He's like, "Yeah, go ahead and put it in their site." So now I have the okay to put that information in firefighterrescuesurvey.com, which was my ultimate goal, because I want any data we can get for those numbers for nationwide to help add with those statistics, because those statistics, statistics are big. I mean, knowing where the victim's located the most, the highest percentage of which room, the bedroom, conditions, all that kind of stuff. That's a big deal. And I feel like us contributing will help too with those numbers. So now that I've got that, okay, we're still going to keep our private platform, but also start submitting to firefighterrescuesurvey.com to help with those numbers as well. And I think it's an excellent thing. And it needs more publicity. I mean,
Yeah.
Right now they've had, I think it was like 104 rescues they've had, Brush just put out a report. What was it here? There's been 122 civilian home fire fatalities from January 1 to January 17th, but there's been 184 fireground civilian rescues reported in that same time frame. And then there's only been 36 surveys submitted. So out of 184 rescues, we'll have 36 surveys.
That's crazy to me. And I'm sure I'm not the only one out there that those numbers are compared like that. You know, you actually have that many more rescues than fatalities, because you don't hear that put out there very much. You hear about the fatalities, you hear about the rescues, but as far as looking at the numbers side by side, I would have never guessed that it would have been that high, you know, of a ratio. So that's a cool thing. And I know you've got you've got your program pulled up and you were wanting to share it. Is that something you want to go ahead and do right now to kind
Yeah.
of talk it through?
Yeah. And
So
before I do that, like I just want to reiterate, that hit home listening to Chief Brush's talk at the
yeah,
Mid-America Pools Conference.
yeah,
The last 40 something years. And if you look at the numbers and the facts, what exactly have we done to better, as firefighters, what can we prove that we've accomplished? And that was a gut check, man. And then him showing this, and now you can see as he's collecting this data, you can see the difference in the numbers with somebody actually recording this stuff. That's a huge deal. And
yeah,
that kind of hit home pretty good for me. I can go in and show, if you want, for the ones that are watching this on YouTube, the ones that are listening on iTunes or anything like that, obviously won't be able to see the screen, but I'll kind of show just a brief image of what our survey looks like and kind of the data. And again, this is something that it doesn't have to be through Microsoft. It doesn't have to be that. You can do it through Google Forms. Can you see that okay, Jeremy?
yep,
So basically, I just, again, created a platform where the information can be inputted. Again, the questions and stuff came from firefighterrescuesurvey.com. Obviously, their credit here at the bottom, firefighterrescuesurvey.com. Ideally, I would like our members to actually go in and put it in their website personally, just so we get the most accurate information.
yeah,
Whether that's going to happen or not, you know how it is trying to ask firefighters to do something extra on top of normal paperwork. It's almost impossible. So I tried to make this as easily accessible as possible. Let me go down to this. So that's what the actual survey looks like. And then the data. The way Microsoft Forms populates it is it shows the data. So for instance, this is kind of my soapbox, but were the ports of the victim location correct? Then you can go over the pie graph. It shows the percentage of whether they're correct or not correct or not applicable. That's one of the things as far as the search stuff, whether it's the first writing officer or the or dispatch or somebody saying that nobody's home or it's a vacant structure, nobody lives there. I hate hearing that over the radio. I think that for me, anyways, personally, if I'm responding to that fire, then I automatically, subconsciously, it checks me out of expecting a victim. And I'm sure you'd agree. But anyway, so these numbers, that's where we can get some of those numbers. And then just like the main website, this is kind of our populated, these are the different grabs we've had. I think I've got like 40 something recorded. I've tried to go back. I just started this in 2020, but I've gone back through our NIMFRS firefighter reporting system, our fire reporting system, and looked up, like searched through, I've actually gone through like 2012, but I only have 2018 on here. And then inputted rescues that we've had in the past. So again, it's on the map. You click on one, then it gives the information of the details and all that kind of stuff. So that's the biggest part of it. The one thing I tried to do to make it easier to accept, easily accessible, we sent these flyers out to the stations. Kind of gives a vision of the survey. talks about what we're looking for, and then they're meant to be posted at the stations. And then this QR code can be scanned with an iPhone camera or QR code app, and it'll take them automatically to the survey.
That's cool.
So just another way to make it easier.
Yeah. So everybody out there that is just listening, not watching YouTube, he pulled up some graphs and information like he talked about, and that's kind of the coolest part for me, to sit there and see, like you said, you kind of explained were victims where they were claimed to be. I can't remember how you worded it, but was the information given on scene accurate? And you could literally sit there and see, and the number of non-accurate was 21%. I mean, that's a pretty big percentage of, of false information. And I am right there with you. I think that is a mindset we need to change. The whole, everybody's out. We have an all clear of the structure. If we're getting all clears on the structure before any fire apparatus arrive on scene, I hate that. I think that is one of the worst things we could possibly do. I just don't think it's good. And especially if we're talking about information that's coming from a neighbor, if we're talking about information that's coming from a PD officer that was, arrived on, I don't care. I don't want to hear it. Just like you, don't even say it. I don't feel like we need to be giving all clears on anything unless we are the ones that are giving that all clear from inside. And so that is definitely something I totally agree needs to change.
Well, it's something too, Jeremy, I want to touch on is, so traditionally, our first rig on scene, they'll assign fire attack. Fire attack, backup search, usually what gets assigned. And what I would like to see us try to change, we've got the SOPs of VES. Used to be our VES was only for known victim, known location. Well, that's changed here not too long ago to where it can be for known victim, known location, or it can be for, even if there's not a known victim, known location. So more of a targeted search. So we can target our search to bedrooms. So kind of what I've been preaching to the guys with this last search class and stuff is, why, if we have our fire attack taken alpha side going through the main path of egress, why are we sitting our primary search the same way? Why not go and attack a window to a bedroom, or go attack Charlie's side instead of doubling our efforts in the same egress? If fire attack comes across the victim in the egress, they're going to find that victim if they're laying in that hallway or right behind the door. So why not be faster and go through a window to a bedroom or the Charlie side? And then the kickback I got was, well, so you're telling us to take windows. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is do a VES, unknown victim, unknown location, because we're still going to isolate that room. So take that VES, take that window, and that gives us, our victims, a faster, better chance to find them and get them removed from the structure rather than, and for us, a lot of people say, well, you're in a big city, you've got everybody that shows up on the scene. That's a luxury. Well, no, not really. Because what you end up with is you end up with 10, 12 guys bottlenecked into the living room or the hallway that nobody can get past one way or the other. So it can be a luxury, but it can also be a hindrance because you got so many freaking guys on scene.
Oh yeah.
So that's the other thing is just, why don't we, and then, even on our 360s, so as we do our 360, we're really good at pointing out where the fire is. Well, how about we point out where the searchable spaces are? Not survivable, but the searchable spaces, because we can't determine what's survivable, but we can determine what's searchable. So as you're doing a 360 as an officer, hey, main body of the fire is on the 80 corner, and I've got searchable rooms on BC corner. Start your primary search for the BC window. I mean, why are we not going about it that way? So, sorry, just kind of my soapbox.
Oh, that's good, and this is probably something that we need to have you back on and dig into just that. And somebody that I'm kind of starting to become good friends with, and I'm sure you know of him, Sean Duffy. He's a huge search guy, and his partner Pablo Jenner. Those guys are freaking. They're the search people. They're on top of the game there. And I've had some good conversations with those guys as well. And that's another area that I have started to gain some passion for as well. because I see the importance of it. And we've had conversations with my crew about VES because to me, we have to be good at VES. I don't mean know how to do it. I don't mean going through our quarterly company drills and doing it pretty good. I mean, we have to be freaking solid at VES because that is probably one of the best opportunities for us to make the biggest difference. If we are solid at that, if we have the game plan down, we have writing assignments, we know exactly what every person is responsible for in that, in that situation. For us to be able to get out there, knock it out, just blow it out of the water on a training exercise and know that we can do it, that's where we need to be, because we need to start getting better at that and taking advantage of situations where that's a possibility. If you have an 80% fully involved structure, but that 20% is a bedroom or two, then we can't look at that like a fully involved structure. That is a building that needs to be searched. And so I am with you. I have a passion for that as well. And again, I have frustrations as well because we aren't doing it right. We need to be doing better.
Yeah, I agree. And your first time to VES can't be on the fire scene. I mean, that's something, like you said, that's something that's got to be practiced and gone through. And but yeah, I feel like for the most part, okay. So for instance, last year we had through our survey, I collected some of the data. We had 641 structure fires last year, and there was 10 rescues. 7 of those were removed from the structure with a pulse. 3 were removed without a pulse. And then there was like 3 or 4 on-scene fatalities. So just seeing that, for the most part, we're doing a good job with our search as a department, which is why I want to keep that private survey. But what we can't track, and this is hard for not only us to track, but even firerescuesurvey.com, is the status of the victim once they get to the hospital, or if they make it from the hospital, that kind of stuff. And that's, I mean, but at least we're getting the parameters that we can, and also seeing where the victims, the times that they're removed the fastest, whether it's through a window or through the egress or whichever. So, man, I just think it's so important that if we could just get more people on board with that website, with that survey.com, that it would just further validate the training that needs to be done and the things that can be worked on, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And things like that, they give a voice to the conversations of that we're having right now, of proving that, okay, we're doing good, but we still can be doing better. And that stuff, that's real data. That's historic things that actually happened. That gives some power to those conversations. That gives some backing to the people that are trying to push to be better against people that don't feel that it's necessary and needed. So I think it is very important for us to get that word out. If anybody's out there that is in that situation, that has been a part of a rescue, been a part of a grab, whatever you want to call it, that is something that we need to kind of start taking on as a responsibility to get done, so that we can have that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, man, love the conversation. Like I said, I would love to have you back on and just dig into some search stuff, and maybe even have, the other guys I mentioned on as well, and we'll just have a giant round table and just wear it out completely. But I truly enjoy anything to do with training and leadership and humility. And that's I knew I was going to be looking forward to this conversation, and that's exactly what I got. So I very much appreciate your time and your knowledge of what you passed on to me today.
Man, I appreciate coming on. And I'll just add one other thing. My wife and Corley's wife and Major Y'all's wife from training. They were going to have a conference here this last fall, but they postponed it due to COVID. But it kind of falls on your podcast with LJ as far as the family side.
Yep.
They're doing a one-day conference called Firewife Life, and it's to get the wives, the spouses of firefighters in for a day and kind of discuss the life of a firefighter or a firefighter's wife. So, but you can find their information or follow that on Instagram, Firewife Life, or on Facebook for anybody that's interested. Kind of tag into LJ's podcast
Yeah.
as far as the family side of it. But yeah, I just want to kind of throw a shout out to that.
Yeah, definitely. I was actually just about to kind of let you plug anything that you had coming up or anything like that. That's great. I haven't heard of that, but definitely want to do anything I can to support that, as get my wife involved in it as well. But that's great. Is there anything else that you have coming up or that you want to kind of speak to?
Man, not that I can think of. I think we pretty much covered it all. You can, if you have any questions or anything, find me on Facebook, Justin Lorenzen on Facebook, or the training officer. That's my pages are on Facebook. LJ, you can find him on the training officer. He's the other guy that helps blog on there. It's hard for me to keep up with it and keep regular content on there. So he kind of helps out, and he does a freaking awesome job. He puts some good stuff on there. So, but yeah, that's about it, really, to be honest.
All right. Sounds good. Appreciated it. I hope that, as always, I always get something out of these conversations. It doesn't matter if it's, somebody that is nationally known, like some of, the people I've had on, or somebody that is not even in the fire service, like Rodney, who I had on last week, who's a comedian. He's not even involved in fire service. I just learn something from everybody, and I enjoy that so much. So again, appreciate your time. I look forward to building more of a relationship with you and your Oklahoma City guys, and just looking forward to learning from you and getting better with you. So thank you.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
We will talk to you later, and everybody out there, until next time, stay safe and take care of each other.